Hey everybody, Mark from Northeast Bass Fishing. How you doing? I went out fishing today, and I caught a lot of fish. No monsters. I would say the biggest fish was probably in that, 2.5 to 3 pound range. Might have had two that were pushing three, but a lot of bites. And it was pretty much, as you can see here, this was like 5 minutes into the day. It was a chatterbait and a jig day. I think I did catch one other fish on a frog, but everything else was chatterbait and jig. And I threw the trap a lot. I threw some soft plastics around, but it seemed like the only thing I could get them really going on was the chatterbait and the jig. So that first fish was a nice one. That was on the chatterbait. This is a little bit further down the down the shoreline there, and I had flipped a lot through there and nothing. Put the chatterbait, picked it back up, and I catch this little guy coming up here in a sec. I think right here. It is a small fish. I don't even know if he's a pounder, but that kind of told me, after flipping for like 15 minutes and not getting a sniff, that at least at that time of the morning, I think it was like 9:30, that probably the chatterbait was the way to go. As you guys can see, this is a little guy. And I did record with both cameras, but it seemed like the back view was the best, so I didn't really bother splicing in the front camera you kind of see sticking out there. So now that I've found the back view that looks the best, maybe I'll just go with that. But I just kept working down the line. This was a few minutes later. I threw out, and I thought I was stuck in grass. And then all of a sudden it was pulling, so there was a bass on it. It was a pretty decent one, too. It seems like a lot of them, today were like long but little skinny still. So they got to start munching up here for when fall comes. But there was a lot of grass on this guy, so I think I was probably pulling it through the grass, and he probably hit it then. So that was a nice one. So that was the third fish of the day, and then I fished around through the jig, through the rattle trap, and not much was going on. Then I got up to this shoreline. Get to this dock and this boat here, flip the jig by it, and catch this little guy. So this point I always like to fish when I go to this lake, and today it was good, and it was all jig fish. A little bit further down the line, flipping the jig, you see I got all the, we just had a bunch of rain for the last, 4 or 5 days, so the lakes are all full, obviously. So that brush I like to, flip under there. And I catch another one. A little better than the other guy, not a monster. Pound and a half or maybe. But if I'm catching them on a jig, I'm not that picky. Sure, I want to catch big fish, but as long as they're biting and I can fish the way I like, it's always fun. So this was the second jig fish on that area. This was like 2 or 3 casts after that last fish. He was definitely better than that last small guy. And then I went down a little further. Kept working down this line, as you'll see here in a sec. Working down, and there's another guy here. So it's 3 right on that big point on the lake. Another decent one, 2-pound range, maybe a little bigger than a 2-pounder. But it was good. So this is like an hour in, and hour and 15 minutes in, and I've got they're biting the chatterbait, they're biting the jig, and so I'm happy. I just kept at that point. I just started switching off, and I'm moving around, throwing that chatterbait along that. It's a shallow flat there. There's a lot of weeds, and I was gonna go up and flip it, and I took a few casts with the chatterbait and catch this nice one, right at the kind of the point of those pads there. And he was a nice one. He took me into the pads. When he first bit, I thought it was a really big one, but he was a nice one. It was one of the better ones of the day right there. One of the better ones of the day. But I just kept working it along. And as I said, switching up between the jig and the chatterbait. This, I think, is probably the best fish of the day. And I literally threw it up to the bank, and he was on it. So he must have been sitting in 6 or 8 inches of water, right up on the rocks, maybe sitting in the sun. But a nice chunk on the chatterbait. This is probably if I were gonna, go by weight, this was probably the biggest fish of the day. But like I said, 3-pounder, maybe a little better than 3, but he needs to start eating some real stuff. His stomach was he's fattening up a little, but a nice fish, and he was right up. You can see those rocks up on the bank. He was right up in there. He splashed me right in the face when I threw him in too. Then I just kept working up the line, and so it always happens. You catch a nice one, and you throw up, and then you're going to catch a dink. So, like a couple seconds later, I throw up, and I think I'm in the weeds, and I pull it out of the weeds, and all of a sudden this little guy's on it. So this fish, that last one probably could eat this fish, but I thought I was just stuck in the grass. But you can see that he was probably could be eaten by that last fish. But so far, like I've been saying, then I got all the weeds off my bait. I just kept working around. I flipped a little, and I worked at the point behind me a little bit with some soft plastics, and just could not get anything going. And of course, I picked the chatterbait right up again, and I get a bite. So you sometimes you just gotta go with what the fish want. Just got to go with what they want. And you can see that boat straight ahead. A little while later, I throw the chatterbait right next to that boat, and the fish comes out and nails it, but he gets off. So I don't have any video of him. And I was working it around to the back. I like to frog back here. I really have much. Think the frog bite would be much, so I just kept throwing the chatterbait. And I catch this guy just on the outside of the pads. I was getting ready to. You see the pads ahead. I was going to frog those. Waited till I was kind of waiting for the afternoon for that sun to beat on the pads for a little longer. A decent one, decent 2-pound range fish, 1.5 pound, 2-pounder. And this is my one coming up here. This will be my one frog fish of the day, and I did not even know the fish was on. I had some blow-ups. I throw it out, boom, I get that little blow-up. I don't even know the fish is on there, and I reel it, and I can feel the weight, and I see the splash, so okay, there's a fish on there. I don't even know if because when I pick the fish up, he's not huge. When I pick him up and grab the frog, it just comes right out of his mouth. I don't even know. I mean, the hooks may have come out, but he might have just been clamped on it for all I know. He might have just been clamped on it. So I frogged around there for a while. I didn't get anything. So I started throwing the chatterbait again. I'm around the back of this island here. I'm just chucking the chatterbait around to catch one. Kind of like the ones you've seen, those, 1.5 to 2-pound fish. I don't even know if he's 1.5 pounds. But as I said, you're getting bites, you're happy. So then I took a break, had some lunch, flipped around, threw the chatterbait around, nothing much, and I was starting to work back to the ramp, and I started flipping again. And it seemed like it did get a little slower later in the afternoon, like after 1:30, 2 o'clock. It started to slow down a little bit. And maybe I just hit the best areas where the fish were the most active. But I catch this decent one on the jig. I always like to fish this shoreline with a jig, as you do well there. And this was a decent one. Nice fish. This was the last fish of the day that I got in the boat. It was probably the worst release of a fish I've done in a long time, as you guys will see. So I hold him up and drop him, and then he flops around, and I kind of just gave him a shove into the water. But it was a good day. I had a lot of bites. It was a short day. I only fished for about 5 hours. The first 3 hours, it was like I was getting a bite all the time. Then it kind of did slow down a little bit. Then I'm going back to the ramp, and I'm just flipping around here, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see something move. You guys can see this big heron. I didn't even see comes flying out of a tree. Scared the crap out of me. He did that to me like 3 times if it was the same one. But just a quick finish up here. Here's the bait. That's the chatterbait I was throwing. Just a jackhammer there, 1/2 ounce jackhammer. And a jig, 3/8 ounce jig. That's the flipping stick, the ardent flipping stick I was using. The speed spool loose reel. And on the chatterbait, that's just the Veracity Abu Garcia rod I was using. So that's it, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Mark out.